Now, a short time ago, I spoke to the Minister in charge of Southern Response, Grant Robertson. He told me the decision to appeal the Dodds High Court judgement is the government's decision and maintains it's the right decision, but he says it was a tough one to make.
I'm sorry for the situation that they find themselves in, but on balance, the decision we've had to make here is about the longer term issues that are facing Canterbury, and indeed for the New Zealand taxpayer to be confident that we've got clarity about what needs to be done. Ultimately, once we get that clarity, it is my intention that we'll move towards proactive solutions for the people who are affected. So I am very sorry for the Dodds that they are in the middle of this. We've sought to recognise that by taking on their legal costs and paying those and their future legal costs within this process. But we do need clarity for the sake of other Cantabrians and indeed for all New Zealanders.
So you're basically using them as a test case?
It's a form of test case. I mean, what we're really doing here is seeking to get clarity about effectively the scope and the scale of the judgment, whether or not this means going back and looking at other settled cases where payment hasn't been made around issues like professional fees. That is an important consideration. It's an important consideration for those who might take future court cases in Christchurch. And the reality is, if we stopped today, there would almost certainly be other court cases. We can hopefully resolve matters through this case so that others don't need to go down that path.
Do you need the court, though, to tell you what the right thing to do is? Couldn't you just, as you say, proactively decide that this is what you're going to do? You're going to go and pay those people the balance of what they think they're owed?
Yeah, we just need more information to be able to put together a proactive solution. At the moment, we don't have that clarity, and so that's what we're seeking out of this Court of Appeal process. I'm incredibly conscious of how long this has taken for the Dodds, and we've said that we'll work with the Dodds' lawyer to get what is called a priority fixture within the Court of Appeal so that we can move this through as quickly as possible. The commitment that Minister Woods and I made today to the Dodds in person was that we wanted to be constructive through this appeal process. Let's get the clarity on the scope and scale here and work to come up with a proactive solution for all of the claimants who are affected.
You've had some documents from Treasury. They've done a report to suggest what the fiscal risk here is to the Crown. How big is your liability here? What have they told you?
Look, I'm not going to get into that today except to say that it is significant.
Why not, Minister?
because for reasons of commercially in terms of what may happen at the other end of this. All I can, and I'm prepared to say to you today, Lisa,
it's taxpayer money though. Okay, so just give us a ballpark then. What do you think you're up for?
It's a significant sum of money, but I take your point. It is taxpayer money, and that's why we're going through the process we're going through now, is to get that clarity so that on behalf of New Zealand taxpayers and Christchurch taxpayers who are affected by this, that we get it right. But we are talking here about potentially a very significant liability for the Crown.
Billions?
I'm just not going to give numbers today, Lisa.
How many people are waiting in the wings, do you think? How many cases have parallels to this?
Again, that is exactly the reason why we're getting some clarity, to make sure that we understand. But you must have a ballpark. You must have been given a ballpark and all of this information about your fiscal risk. So what have you been told about the number of cases that are out there? It depends very much on where this lands at the end of the Court of Appeal. I've heard numbers like 3,000 homeowners, but we have to get more clarity in order to be able to see where this lands.
If the court comes back to you and says, hey, look, those ones who took full and final settlements, you don't have to worry about them, you're not responsible for them, what happens to them? Will you just leave them or will you do something for them?
Well, this is about getting clarity of law. Then we will work out what a proactive solution would look like. I'm not going to preempt those discussions today. What we are trying to do here is reach resolution for all, in fact, of those people in Canterbury who are still have outstanding claims or cases. We were able to do that around the on-solds issue. We're now working through this one. At this point in time, we don't have the information we need to be able to come to that proactive solution, but it is coming. And I just want to repeat, Lisa, to you, because I know the Dodds have been on your show. When I met with them today, I feel huge sympathy for them, and I want to do everything I can to be able to support them through this next phase, and that includes obviously paying their legal fees and working as expeditiously as we can.
Okay, so the legal fees, how much is that going to cost you?
Oh, look, that's a question you'd be needing to ask the Dodds, to be frank.
But you must know. You're going to reimburse those fees.
I genuinely don't know. I mean, that will be a matter to be sorted out between the Dodds and their lawyer, and then between their lawyer and Southern Response.
So how much does this all cost Southern Response to be taking the Dodds through court?
Again, I don't have that information with me.
Why don't you know those numbers?
Well, they're not numbers I've got to hand. In terms of the cost to the Dodds, that simply is not a number I would ever know. That will be a matter between them and their lawyer.
You can appreciate that, well, this couple have really they've almost been broken by this. They have been pushed to the absolute limits. Two of your very good citizens, Minister. One of them's had their retirement stolen from them at the moment, and they're left in limbo. How do you reckon they've been treated?
Oh, look, I found the experience of meeting with them today very humbling. It was an insight into a very difficult experience for them. I don't believe, that the situation is one that they should be in. It's one that we're trying to work our way through for them. And I was very clear, and Southern Response were very clear in meeting them today to express our apologies to them. We asked them to bear with us through this next phase while we get that clarity, and so we can move to a proactive solution.
So just to be clear, you think wrong has been done by them?
It's clear to me that this process is one where Southern Response, particularly carrying on from its role when it was AMI, I'm not sure due diligence was done when AMI became Southern Response around the way that they worked. We'll work our way through that, but we'll await the outcome of this appeal. Then we'll be able to give clarity not only to the Dodds but to the people of Canterbury. And I just want to repeat again, I feel very sorry for the Dodds that they are in this situation, and I'm doing my best as a new minister coming in here to recognise that by paying their legal fees and by working as quickly as we can to get this decided.
You will be aware that the High Court found that there were obviously, it was running a two-quote system, Southern Response, and in the court documents that this decision was made by senior management level within Southern Response. Have you found out who exactly made that decision?
That's not something I've looked into at this point, Lisa. I've been focused on making the decision that we've made here. There are many issues to look at with regard to Southern Response, and I'll work through them over time. But my priority has been sorting out a process so we can move forward as quickly as possible.
So you don't know if any of those decision makers are still within Southern Response? The people who decided on this process, which the court has found was misleading and deceptive, you've yet to establish whether any of the key decision makers in that are still within Southern Response?
There are matters that you should primarily be putting to the Southern Response board.
We'd love to. Would you like to tell them that you'd like them to come on the show? Because we'd love to have them.
I'm more than happy to have a chat with them about that, but I'm here now answering the questions that I can for you. But clearly you'll understand that as a minister that there are staffing and operational matters that don't fall within my area of responsibility. What I am responsible for is making sure that we get on and settle these matters so that people like the Dodds can get on with their lives.
Minister, while we've got you here, I just want to know, what did you know about allegations of sexual assault by a Labour Party staffer?
Well, as I've said a number of times this week, Lisa, I'm not going to go into details about that. I want to protect the privacy and the anonymity of the young people who are involved here. They deserve to have their voices heard by the QC. That's my focus.
I'm not asking you to name any of the complainants or go into the details, the specific details. I just want to know if you knew there were allegations of sexual assault by a Labour Party staffer. Did you know that? Because you're on the list of who was in the know.
Look, as I've said, I'm just not going to comment on those matters because this is not a political game of who knew what when. This is about young people with very serious allegations involved who need to be protected through this process, who need to have their voices heard. This is a situation where, as I've said earlier in the week, I read, as everybody else did in the spin-off on Monday, allegations I had never seen before. We've heard from the Prime Minister this week about what she's said. about the fact that at every stage of this process, whenever concerns have been raised, they've been referred to the party to ensure that they were being acted on appropriately. That is the same experience for me, and I am, deeply distressed by what I have heard this week. There is now a process for the QC to be able to deal with that.
Understood. If it turns out that you did know about allegations of sexual assault prior to them being published in the media, will you resign your portfolios?
Lisa, I've acted appropriately throughout this process. At any point at which I have had matters raised with me, I have referred through the party to ensure that they are being dealt with appropriately. I've received assurances from the party, and I believe I've responded in the way I should. But I'm not going to go into details about that, because for me, I'm going to finish this, Lisa. This is about these young people and their well-being. It is not a game of political who knew what when.
Are you saying that you passed some information on to the party about these matters?
What I'm saying is, and I'm not going to get into specifics, is that I have acted appropriately throughout this process, that wherever I have had concerns, wherever I've had things raised with me, I have spoken to the party to seek assurance that they have been dealt with appropriately. I'm not going to get into details.
When you say the party, who do you mean specifically? Who did you seek assurances from?
Again, I'm not going there. This is a matter that has to be dealt with through the QC.
Why can't you give us some names? In the interests of truth and transparency, just tell us who you sought assurances from.
Because this is a process that the QC has been brought in to deal with, and I know you're doing your job, Lisa, to ask questions like this, but this is actually not about politics. This is about the young people involved in ensuring that they now get their voices heard, that there is a good process. The Prime Minister has made the point. There were mistakes made in this process. We now owe it to the young people involved to protect their privacy and to ensure that they have a process with the QC where they get to hear their voices heard. That's the process I'm supporting.
Has the Prime Minister had a conversation with you about what you know and what you knew?
Again, I'm not going to go into that. Clearly, during this week, there have been a lot of conversations that have taken place, but I'm just not going to go there. My focus is on these young people and protecting their privacy and ensuring that they get their chance to have their voices heard.
And that's Senior Cabinet Minister Grant Robertson.